Okay, so at this point, I'm going to ask Jess and Stephen to join on video as well. And we will move into the panel portion of this. I have some questions that I want to ask, and I see we've got a few questions in the Q&A that people in the audience have brought up. This chance to introduce himself a little bit, and then maybe you could speak a little bit to having listened to both Shardae and Jess in a Canadian context. How much of that similar, or how different is your?
Yeah, sorry. The perfect time to start breaking up was just then. Hopefully, you guys can hear me, and I'm coming through clearly. Yeah, hello everybody. Thanks for being here.
Okay, great. I can hear you.
Perfect. All right. So yeah, thank you, Jess and Shardae. A few sort of stitches I would kind of weave into the fabric of your advice. One was around sort of the parents' side and getting feedback from parents. One concrete way I've found that's useful, and I've been doing it for only 3 weeks here in West Vancouver, is just a quick 2 to 3 questions through. We have Google Classroom, so I use a Google form and just get some feedback. And I get about half the parents giving me some feedback, and it just different questions every week. Some of them are multiple choice. This past week it was like open answer. What are you liking? What are you finding difficult? What would you change? So just super quick and simple. It gives parents that venue to give you that feedback, and it doesn't have to be an email that you're kind of sorting all out. You can go to it and you can sort of leave it for when you have time to see that information. The second thing around tools, I rated my school. Not everybody has an ability to go to their school right now, but if you do have that ability, I stole the document camera, and I actually ended up taking the PA system from the school as well, which Shardae mentioned that my music was really good earlier, but so yes, I have a 1,000 watts PA system in my kitchen now, but it allowed me to like do a little recording for a student of mine whose birthday it was, and I could mix in the Queen song and do a little Queen rendition for his birthday. So things like that. And whatever your talent is, whatever your thing is at your school, did you get that from your school to your home? So I'm like the tech guy at the school, and the PA system is like the thing that I help manage at the school. And so that was an easy thing for me to do, and nobody else really wanted it. So I could borrow it. But you know, even something like a document camera, if you have one at school, can you get it at home? And if you don't have one at school and you haven't been thinking about getting it, that's actually been a really useful tool for me. And they're about $200, so they're not crazy expensive if your school can afford it. It's been a really good tool for getting that overhead look, and I can write out and show the students with my hand as I build my lessons. And so little tools like that give you a few different options. Another tool that we haven't mentioned is audio. So one of the things that I've been trying to translate from my class, just like you guys are sort of saying, how do you translate the culture from your class to whatever constraints you have in your online environment? And up till today, we didn't actually have any access to two-way video. So one of the things I've been doing is an audio recording of a novel, and doing sort of reading responses to the novel every day. And actually my educational assistant, so I have a special education assistant who supports a student in my class, but to help her stay connected to the class community, we've been having a duel. So we each record a chapter of a novel every night, and then we post that in the morning, and students can choose one or the other chapter to respond to, but they can listen to both and decide who is the better reader. Is it Mr. Price or Ms. Karami? So things like that, and even things, I wore my lab coat from class. I don't know if you guys can see that there, but those little things that stitch in the face-to-face classroom, those little rituals, the little jokes, things that you can do to keep that connection going are really great. On the time management, because that's been a big thing for me. I'll be very honest. I'm the worst person to be on the panel for time management. I was up till 1 a.m. last night preparing my lessons, and pretty much every night for the last couple of weeks. But here's what I'm learning so far. Friday is Freestyle Friday, according to my VP. So we don't actually post any new work on Friday. It's a catch-up day, which means that for teachers, it's Phone It In Friday, because we can kind of lay off on actually creating content and start getting around to feedback. And that's another area where Jess and Shardae both said, okay, well, be kind to yourself and be reasonable with your expectations. So one of the ways that I'm trying to manage expectations is around that feedback. And thinking of parents as a resource, because I have a son who's 8 in grade 3 and my students are in grade 4 or 5. So a lot of that reflection from my experience with my son at home learning has been that I'm giving him as a parent a lot of feedback. And I know my parents at home, where they can, are giving their kids a lot of feedback on their work as they're doing it. That sort of formative piece that we as teachers would normally be able to do in the classroom, that hasn't disappeared. That might be difficult for some students, and you might target a couple to get that feedback. But for most, the parents can actually give that formative feedback if you're giving reasonably good instructions. And so the way that I've arranged with my admin, and I've announced it to parents last night, was okay, so you're going to hand me in 2 things a week, and they're going to be the 2 things: one where you were thinking as a scientist or a mathematician, and one where you're thinking as a writer or a social scientist. And I'm going to focus on giving feedback on 2 things per student per week, because to be honest, the workload of planning and kind of creating all of these things is so huge that I just don't have the time to be going in and giving feedback on everything that the students are being asked to do. And so that allows them as well to differentiate. My big mantra, and so this kind of comes to Jean's question, is, okay, so parents, and I've had a few conversations with parents who are super stressed out because I'm putting up a lot of things, a lot of content in my class, because some kids are getting through it at 11 a.m. and other kids are like, oh, it's too much. So I'm being really clear, telling parents, you are the chief executive officer and I am the chief educational officer. So I create the educational opportunity, but you are the one executing, and you are actually senior to me. Just like I would in my classroom differentiate for a student and say, oh, you know what? Why don't you focus on just this thing today? Because I can see that that's the thing that's really going to be what you need today. I'm making sure that parents know that they're not only empowered to do that, but that that's actually what I'm doing every day at school when they're not watching anyway. And so that not only is it okay, but it's normal. And that kind of also speaks to that differentiation question that I saw on the chat as well.
Okay, that was great. So I think there's a lot of threads that we can draw together from your experience and what Shardae and Jess are going through. And you also got to Jean's question there, which is also great. We do have a lot of questions here, and I'd like to maybe jump around in the questions a little bit and pick some out, and also spread those out between all of you. So whoever is confident jumping in to answer one of these questions, please go ahead so we can hear from different perspectives. And if one panelist has a perspective and your experience is different, jump in with your answer as well so that we can see different sides of it. One of the questions I wanted to jump to first, I think, is quite an interesting question asked by Vince. So in my experience, it's hard to get young kids to open up and be talkative about how they're feeling when you check in on them. They don't have the vocabulary, the consciousness of their feelings yet, or it's a cultural thing. And we'll probably see cultural differences between Vancouver and the students in Shanghai. So could you share tips on prying them open? So who would like to jump in on this? Just go for it. I see you ready to go, Jess.
I'll mention that the youngest students that I teach are 6th graders. And generally they were shy in the beginning. Like the whole idea of sitting in their room with a computer and a camera, for a lot of them, that's overwhelming. So a lot of them will be there but have their cameras off. To open them up, I was teasing with like you can get a reward if you join in, if you can beat me to type this. I'll try to engage them by making fun little tasks or challenges where they don't have to feel under pressure. That's worked quite well.
Great. Shardae, yeah?
Yes, thanks, Jess. Definitely do some of those things too. So I teach quite a young age. I teach grade 2. And as Vince said, it can be hard if they don't have the vocabulary. I teach second and third language English learners. I'm really lucky. Before we went online, we actually did a unit on emotions and how to talk about them. So my kids did have a little bit of advantage with the vocab, but things I do is in some of the programs we use, there's little emojicons that they can add. So I say, how are you feeling today? Like, are you feeling happy? And I show them what that looks like, and they can put it in a little smiley face. So visual aspects I think are really fun, and they like that. Some put the really big ones, and I also model what your feelings are like. So I always say, how are we today? And they ask each other. And then I also say, look, I'm feeling a bit tired today. I need to make sure I look after myself, and model what that looks like, so they know it's okay to have a different range of emotions. And as Jess said, it does take a little while. So I use, house points and to encourage them to chat, and they love that because they're contributing to something, and they're just visuals. So sometimes we do like, how are we feeling today? 1, I'm feeling a bit tired, and they can just put the number 1, 2, or 3. So using visuals that make sense to the students have definitely helped. And now my kids get on and they're like, Miss Lana, I'm feeling really happy today. And then all the other kids put happy faces, or another kid say, I'm feeling really sad today. And we talk about what they can do that makes them feel really good.
Great. So it sounds like you're both using the tools that you have, like taking advantage of the tools that you have. You're making sure that kids initially have some direct support in terms of working with their emotions online, right? Understanding their emotions, right? Being able to process that in their communication. And then part of it also sounds like it's a little bit of just time and adjustment to the platform in the experiences that you shared. And Stephen, did you have anything that you wanted to add to that?
That was really good. For me, it's really all about keeping those same connections and routines that that we had in the classroom, and using those as bounding points. So if I was in that situation, I would think, okay, well, what's something we did in class that we can do virtually? The other way is often through storytelling. So if you can, sometimes I'll actually write stories for students. So if you're having trouble with that, take a page from Mr. Rogers and tell the puppet story, or create a story that allows kids to talk about other characters rather than themselves, can be helpful. And lastly, parents. That check in with parents, if that's an option for you, that can be very helpful as well, to get that barometer, because they'll know. 100% they'll know.
Okay, so next question that I want to jump to is this question by Lori Brandon, which I think is a really interesting and a challenging one, is the question about how are you accommodating students with disabilities or anyone who would like to jump in on that.
I only heard the opening part of the question because it froze.
Okay, sorry. I'll say it again. It's Lori Brandon's question. How are you accommodating students with disabilities or SEN?
It's all about differentiation, really, as best you can on online platforms. Of course, if online isn't the most effective, then you need to work offline, but with the same intensity as you would if it was one-to-one. I'd
jump in there. For me, presumably you have a school team as well. And so one of the successful pieces of the last 3 weeks so far is the working with school teams. And so if you have educational assistants who can support that, that's been the case in my class with my main guy who's in need of that support. And also thinking about, okay, well, so our learning support teacher isn't doing the pull out or push in that he did before. So how is he pushing into my online space? And or is he pulling out? Even as simple like my own son's reading, he's writing a story every day and then reads it to the literacy teacher who's helped support his literacy development once a week over the phone. And the other big piece there is the parent communication. So the locus of differentiation for the first front that I would look at is around the parent conversation and how do you support the parent to differentiate for the student. Now that's not always possible because parents obviously also have work. But if that is possible, how are you having that conversation with the parents around differentiating? And lastly, giving that student and that parent and that family permission to pick and choose what works best for them and to identify what works best. So.
Great, Shardae, did you want to add anything?
I was going to, and then Stephen sort of covered everything that I was going to say. So yeah, just
we're in agreement. Great.
You don't have to do everything, and you're providing offline materials. I found some really great resources that you don't need a computer or anything. The students can just do them, and they can just take a photo of them doing the task or whatever, so then they can show you how they're learning. So yeah, differentiation, parent feedback, and giving choices.
So I see we have two questions as well that are both kind of about assessment. So how are you assessing students' work? Are you assigning grades to student work? And how are grades kind of being factored into what could be, say, you know, your summative assessments for the term, that sort of thing?
So what we were doing, we were told from the outset, is that even though we are online, it is a continuation of the curriculum, not to review previous or to start something new. It was just a continuation regardless. We're not necessarily assigning grades as such, but we are marking and feedback as per usual. We were also told as such that the grading and reporting during this special time wouldn't necessarily contribute to an overall report. So we have to be very wary of how we handle and mark the grades and work that we do give, because it needs to reflect the situation. So like Shardae, we've got students that are still abroad. I've got a couple that are still in Spain, and the time difference is 7 or 8 hours. So I have to be aware that that student can't hand in work on this day because they're still in bed, you know. So it's being, you have to be conscious of your students and what they can do given their situation.
Great. Yeah, Shardae, go ahead.
Yeah, so I guess same sort of thing as Jess, especially here I'm in Shanghai as well. So it's a continuation of the students' learning. So we didn't go over anything else unless they need review. But we make sure that we provide the feedback to the students just to help them know where they're at and where they're moving to and going to be going next. So we try and keep it as similar as possible, but not, yeah, we've talked about that it's not going to be going to a report. It's also for teachers, I guess that's what assessment is for, you to know what you need to do as a teacher to help continue to support the students. So yeah, not using grades as such, but providing feedback, just valuable and useful feedback. We did do an assessment just to see how the student English was going and a unit we had completed, and we used a rubric that just highlights where the students are at and where we want them to be going, and they self-reflect as well. And that was really useful for the students to see that even though we're online, we're still trying to keep things similar, and so that their learning can continue and grow. But it's not as, we are mindful of time differences and things like that. The students are taking that into consideration, that they might not be able to show you what they know through the online platform as easy. as easily as in the class.
Great, good insights. Yeah, Stephen, you want to add?
Yeah, just the last thing for me is really I've been de-emphasizing the whole sort of report card and assessment piece. I've got students who are completing, most of the stuff or all of the stuff plus extensions, all the way down to students who are kind of setting their own path and kind of doing a true homeschool thing because of their environment and what they're interested in and all these sorts of things. So it really is a challenging context to assess in. And for me, it's around kind of echoing Shardae's thing. What do you see that's strong in this work? What's next? And how are you taking control of yourself as a learner? And that's what we do regularly because I teach in a Montessori school anyway. Everybody is essentially all differentiated all the time. So that's continues our regular conversations from class, and I'm just going to not worry about report cards until my district tells me what I'm supposed to be doing.
Can I ask all of you then, because Shardae, you're in a IB school, a PYP school, right? And it sounds like a nice way to deal with assessment. Do you feel that?
Well,
Alex,
I don't know if my internet cut out or if it was yours, Alex, but I missed that whole thing.
Yeah, you have a really good talent for cutting out when you're asking a question, Alex. I'm very impressed.
I'll try and keep it short then. The change to not focus so much on grades sounds like it could be very positive in some ways. Do you find that in your experience?
Yeah, we haven't had grades. We've had sort of assessment indicators, so meeting, extending, developing, and that's all that I report out on my report cards, and then obviously the narrative. So I think that is in line with future process. If it was a high school conversation and we were using the grades as social currency to get into university, it's a different conversation. But for the elementary context, I think that that all of that. Less grades, more what's next is good. Shelly Moore is a specialist in British Columbia, and she does a 5 More Minutes podcast, MOORE minutes, and she's got some really good things to say about that for both differentiation, but for general instruction about how to frame that idea of what's next for students rather than are you meeting, she says, don't should on me, right? So don't, you should be at this reading level. No, don't should on me. What's next?
That sounds like a useful resource, her podcast. I'll have to check that out. Okay, I'm going to take out one more question. Hopefully you can hear me right now, because we have a couple of questions around going back into school. Because China is starting to look like it's going back into school. We know that here in BC as well, we will eventually go back into school. So how are you as teachers feeling about that, going back into school? And what types of discussions or preparation is going on around a return to campus?
I guess I can jump on that. I don't know. Oh, hang on, my internet.
Are you there, Jess? Maybe it's me.
I am here. What I was saying, it is a little scary, but everything is in place. The idea of the temperature checks at the gate, everyone wearing masks. What else? The restriction of moving students. So students will be set up in classrooms around school. You know SUAS, so it will be like the second floor will be grade 9 of my stream, the third floor will be grade 9 of local stream, for example, and how we're going to manage the movement of people. I'm a little conscious of that. Jalka is a busy school, you might remember. So it's only the 9th graders that are coming back, so it shouldn't be too bad. But staff on Fridays, so I'll know more after Friday, I guess.
Thanks, Jess. Yeah, it's great here in China. They have a lot of precautions set up: temperature checks, face masks. Most places you've got to record your details, so if there's any issues, they can contact you. So we got a message yesterday saying that there is potential for staggered start. High school is going first, so then you're not having an influx of 1,000+ students at the one time. So I am a little apprehensive and nervous, but I know that they take it very seriously here in China and Shanghai particularly. So I'm just following the protocols and what's needed to happen. I'm looking forward to getting back into the classroom, but aware of the different things that are going to be in place. And a big thing I think is teaching the students about hygiene and how we can continue maintaining that when we get back to school.
We just got out, so I'm just not there on the coming back again. I would love to go back. Hooray! That would be amazing. But they're doing summer cleaning in our school.
I've been thinking myself I would be somewhat apprehensive because of having a little bit of asthma. Going back into a busy school context with the possibility of a second wave coming, that sort of thing, that there would be a kind of a risk component to that would be a little bit stressful and uncomfortable.
Mm-hmm. Yep. When you're wearing a mask all the time, like when we return to school, we will have to wear masks all the time in our office, in the corridor.
Are you?
What?
Sorry, I think my connection must be having problems here.
Oh, okay. I was saying about wearing the mask all of the time. As again, I have a touch of asthma too. It's stressful to wear it just to go to the shop, let alone to wear all day in school. So yeah, it's going to be tricky. Okay,
we've already gone for about 1 hour and 20 minutes, so we've taken a lot of your time, and I really appreciate that. I just want to ask one very last question before we wrap up. Is from having this experience online and then going back to campus in future, is there anything from the online experience that you really want to carry forward and continue when it goes back to campus?
Patience. And understanding, and I know that sounds weird, but the students, while they've been online, particularly with my students, a lot of them, English is a second, third, or even fourth language for some of my kids. So while they've been learning at home in an English curriculum, they have been completely submerged in Chinese, Japanese, or Korean. So they haven't had the same experience as they would have in the classroom. So I think to take away and to really emphasize more on is the idea of patience. Definitely patience.
Yeah, that's a great one.
Great, thank you, Jess. Sure.
I keep talking at the wrong time. That's online for you.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a great one, is patience. I have learned to be so much more patient because, like just now, the internet will cut out or the kids can't log on. So being more patient and realizing that we can adapt the way we teach when we need to. So taking away more, as an IB school, we do a lot of student-led and student agency, but just even more so, giving students more choice and watching them flourish and grow in their own way. I think I'm going to try and implement that more in my classroom because I've been amazed at what the students have actually been able to achieve at such a young age.
So a good learning experience.
Yeah.
And Stephen, for you, it's still kind of an earlier part of the process, but is there anything at this point in it that you want to continue?
Yeah, well, I see Philip's comment about parent engagement, and I think that this will really build empathy among parent communities. They'll have a better understanding of what our day-to-day is, and we have a better understanding of what their needs are. And so keeping that, finding a way of keeping that parent dialogue happening, maybe continuing those sort of survey type things that I'm doing now as part of the temperature check for my instruction is part of it. And so I think that's something that I'll definitely try to retain in some way. The second thing is I'm really getting good at some online descriptions of things and online mini lessons and that sort of stuff. So the ability to kind of create something to support work at home, or even in my differentiated classroom where I've got like 15 questions all in a row, I can be like, oh, there's a video in the classroom that I made last night. Here you go watch it, because my students are all working asynchronously anyway in the classroom for at least half the day. So that can be a resource that I'm like able to kind of just pull out and drop into the classroom for the 5 or 6 who might need a video mini lesson when I'm busy. And lastly, the online read aloud. It's technically against copyright after June, but if I can figure a way around that, reading a story chapter by chapter. A lot of my kids are treating it as a bedtime story, and that's just kind of nifty, and so a way of kind of expanding books for pleasure. And I get to practice my radio voice, which is always fun. But those are the 3 things I would take. Poor Alex is frozen again.
So from everybody, it sounds like the adaptation. Oh no! Can you hear me now?
You're back.
Okay. It sounds like the adaptation is actually leading to some real opportunities in our teaching practice, essentially. And maybe it will be in the long term a good thing for our own professional skills and for our students as a result.
I was joking to my mom, who is also a teacher. She just retired. I said, oh, well, if you had to do a simulation for Pro-D where you were dropped into a problem-based learning scenario where you suddenly had to change your teaching practice, you would pay tens of thousands of dollars to run this simulation for your school to build the kind of problem-based learning skills that we're all having. So there you go. It's a tens of thousands of dollars worth of learning here for our professional development, all for free, courtesy of COVID. Thanks.
All right. So on that positive note, we can wrap things up here. I know Shardae and Jess, it's still the middle of your school day, so you have lessons to go to attend to. As Stephen, you said you're going to be, you've been planning until 1 in the morning, so I'm sure that you are also busy. But I really want to thank each of you for what you've shared, and I'm sure that the audience attending and people who watch the replays afterwards will get a lot of value out of the insights and experience that you have shared. So thank you for that.
You're welcome. It's been great to be here.
Yeah, thanks so much for allowing us to share our experiences. And it's been really great to hear from other teachers in the same situation as well. So it's really nice.
Yeah, thank you, Jess and Shardae, and for all the great comments along the chat here. I've been trying to keep up and also keep up with the listening, so I'll have to keep to take a look through those before I fully log off.
Okay, so great. Thank you, everybody. I will make the whole video recording available, and if it's okay with Shardae and Jess, I'll share the slides as well by email to everyone who's attended afterwards. But I know you've got to get on with your days, so thank you very much. Thank you to everybody who attended, and hopefully see you again soon.
With mine, Alex, there was a separate document. These 7 tips had a separate thing, so that can go as well?
Yes. Yeah, I'll send that out by email to everybody who has registered for it. So even people who couldn't attend because it started at 6:30 in the morning for them will still be able to get those resources, and they'll be able to watch the replay of the whole webinar. Okay, great. So thank you. Have a good rest of the day. Have a good evening, Stephen.
Yeah, good night, Stephen.
Signing off. I've got to go do my the late night is when the recording comes out. That's those witching hours. That's the last thing I do tonight. So, so I'll be story.
Right now, the witching hour, great.
Yeah. So I'll get back to my conch bear. It'll be really good. It's set in India. It's an amazing story. Chitra Banerjee Divakaruni. Really good story. It's about a boy who goes as far away from home as he's ever been, which is why I chose it for when we're all stuck at home.
Okay, great. Thank you again, and good day and good night.